Welcome to the following offering from the WebSphere Education Crash Course Series. This offering is composed of recorded materials from a live WebSphere education class. For more information, please visit us at ibm.com/websphere/education.
Review of process mapping and analysis using WebSphere Business Modeler. In this unit, we want to review some of the basic points for creating business process models. We will be looking at different views and modes, the elements, how to validate and report, and we'll also take a short look at the value of project versioning and WebSphere publishing server. Now the focus is on WebSphere Business Modeler, which is a tool for the business analyst, but it interfaces to a number of other tools that support the development of technology and processes for our business. First of all, we have the idea of a version control system, which is ClearCase or CVS, to control and keep track of the elements as we design them and build a model. So version control becomes important. We have then the publishing server, which allows those people that don't have Modeler to use the business process models by either commenting or reviewing for information. We have an interface to Requisite Pro, which allows the synchronization of business requirements with process requirements. When we get to developing code, we go to the Rational Software Architect and the Rational Application Developer, which help us develop the code that we need to operate the business. Next, we have the interface to the WebSphere Integration Developer, which creates code to be executed on the WebSphere process server. This execution automates our workflow, and it calls on the services or the applications we develop with the application developer. The results from the execution are sent to the WebSphere Business Monitor, which combined with the business measures we defined provides real-time information as the process is executing. Next, we want to look at then the idea of how the process and technology work with each other. We've had technology for some time in our businesses, whether it be as regular machines or computers, and we've been doing process work for some time. But we're getting closer to a good interface between those two, and that was the advent of the idea of the service-oriented architecture, where we're building services or components that can be used over and over. So as we define these components, they become services. Now, this is a good interface between the process and the technology, because as we're defining our business process model, we define the flows, we define the work, we define who's doing it, and at that point where we need to call on some technology, we call on a service to do work for us, in this case process an order or set up an account. And calling on that service at a specific point in a process then takes us down into the major applications and into the technology to provide that function for us. So it's a good way of tying our business process to the technology as we're building our business process models. So why do we need to model something? Well, we only really need to model something if it's complex and we need to understand how it will behave in real life. We build many things. If we build something simple like a doghouse, we don't need much documentation, we don't need much analysis, we just go ahead and build it. If we get to building a house, there's not much modeling required. Mostly what's required is documentation. We need our blueprints, we need our bills of materials, we need things for the contractors that are building, we need things for the inspectors. But it's mostly a documentation, because the techniques for building have been pretty well tested and there's not a lot of new things being done. But as we move to large buildings like skyscrapers, when we need to build that, we need to do more than just documentation. We need to make sure that this building will withstand the forces of nature, such as high winds, hurricanes, earthquakes. And so we need to build a model of what we're going to build and test it with different kinds of simulation or analysis, as well as then provide the documentation and the information for building the particular structure. So then why do we model business processes? Well, business processes were relatively simple, but over time, as we use more and more sophisticated technology and we use resources from all over the world, we need to understand they're becoming more like the skyscrapers. And there are several reasons that we would be building these models. They would start just like building a house. You want to document some existing processes just to understand them. But then you would go ahead and use that model to determine staff levels, systems, facilities. You may be using the model for planning changes to existing processes, which means you have to understand what you're doing and then make changes to it to see how it would behave. You can test and analyze existing and proposed processes. You can look for defects such as bottlenecks. You can also then use your models to support the development of new business applications. So it would define where services need to be called, what needs to be done, and provide the baseline workflow code. Also, this idea of process model helps you visually represent what's happening in the business, because sometimes text, it's not quite clear to see all the complexity in a process, but if you try and diagram it, you can actually see that, and it's more understandable by more people. Now, another thing we know is that when you're going to model, these models need to be well-defined. They need to have a good structure, because not only are they an analysis tool, but they're a communication tool. Now, as we started using Modeler, if you remember, the models are really made up of a multi-dimensional set of business models. It's just not a picture. We had the actual process model, which shows the flow, how work is done. Then we had a resource model that shows who is doing the work, and an information model that shows what we're working on, what information, what business items, and then the organizational model, what's the structure, the location, the organizational unit. Now, these first four work together by connecting the data. In other words, we take an element out of the process model, which is a task, we assign it a resource to do the work, and we assign it some information that it is working on, as well as which organization or location that's in. So these models work together to represent our business process. Then we had analysis models, which are like copies of our main model that we use to do analysis, load testing on the business process itself. We have a collaboration model, which allows people to work together, each working on their own piece, yet working on the whole model together. And then we have a business measures model that helps us define all of the key performance indicators and business metrics to measure the system to see how we are actually performing.
To view the full version of this lesson, please visit the URL below.